Welcome, everybody. I was just told by Greg that I have great intros, so I tried to make that one a really good one. But we are here for the Q4 Star Wars CCG market update. This is something we try to do every quarter. We might have missed last quarter. That's on us, but happy holidays, everybody. We do these videos that we can talk about price transparency. We can talk about building resources for new players and collectors, providing insights into where things are going. So we have a new face here. Let's just do a quick around the horn, 20 seconds of your favorite thing about Star Wars CCG. So I'm going to start with Luke, who's a new face here, who is subbing in for Cam and hopefully a permanent member of the team. Cam will be here. We have not disappeared him. But Luke, do you want to just give a quick intro here?
Sure. Hey, everybody. My name is Luke Fritz. I'm a social studies teacher here in Portland, Oregon. Favorite thing about Star Wars CCG is the lore. I loved, growing up reading the books, but I just loved just the little insights into the characters, into what was going on behind the scenes. And so I'm a huge collector, have been for many, many years, and really excited to join the team and give some market updates.
Yeah, and Luke's going to talk a little bit about uncut sheets, which you can see some examples behind him. So I'm really excited to actually talk about some uncut sheets and get into it. Mark, I think you're up next.
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. Yeah, Mark. One day I'll update the Darth Grader channel on YouTube. Still maintain the eBay store. Yeah, I think my favorite thing about Star Wars CCG, probably similar to Luke, just how it fleshed out every character and every possible thing that shows up in the movies has a story attached to it. Now with its own Wikipedia. So I just like how it kind of sprang that to life, everything in the universe.
Yeah. And Greg, you're up last, but what are you drinking, by the way? I have a bourbon, so that's where I'm at.
This is a Blind Russian.
Okay.
A little Star Wars die cut glass. I think this is my ad. I've got a set of them: a Vader, R2, and a Falcon. This is my go-to drink, the Blind. It's I used to be a White Russian, but it's too weak for me these days, so I've upped my game to the Blind Russian.
So by the way, guys, if you're watching this, you're wondering what are we referencing, all the spreadsheets we're talking about are in the video link. So if you're curious about like where to find this information, this is about price transparency. We want people to see the history of data. We want people to say like, hey, am I getting a good deal or am I overpaying? No one likes to overpay. So this is why we do this sort of stuff. Also, just give a quick plug, like, subscribe, all that stuff. We would love to hit 1,200 subscribers by the end of the year. Who knows? But this is just something we do for fun. So let's kind of get into where we're at in the market. So I think we're way past COVID now. So it's interesting to see that, Star Wars CCG is still selling. People are playing, and I think the game is really solid fundamentals. But why don't we turn it over to kind of Greg here to go through a little bit of the market trends that he's been seeing. We got slide decks. We're more professional than ever here, guys. This is not a rinky-dink channel anymore. We got slide decks now. So I'm going to hand it over to Greg here, and others feel free to come in as well. To compliment Greg's efforts on this super cool deck.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Matt. Appreciate it. I'm trying. Okay, so I guess the report this quarter it's a mix of news. I'd say I have some good news, some bad news, and some interesting news that I don't really know what to do with. The good news is actually in a sense that the average price across all the sets has not really changed much at all since our last update. So comparing the latter half of the year, Q3, and what we have in Q4 with the first half of the year, it's like been a percentage change, like a 1% change. And I take that to be a good thing, just given that there was a kind of slide in value going on for quite a bit. So I take that to be good news. The bad news is that the sales volume has really taken a hit over the last 5 months or so. You can see here that this is down 22% in the last 5 months from the first 6 months of the year. Now, this can be a little tricky because the year is not over yet. So I did a little bit of like prognosis with respect to this last month. But I mean, unless December is just insane in terms of sales volume wise, there's going to be this, roughly 20% drop at the end of this year, the last 6 months compared to the first 6 months.
So just curious to come in here. I mean, I have a theory. I'm wondering if others do as well. I mean, do you kind of just think that maybe like with me, a year ago, I was buying stuff on eBay, right? And now I have my sets, I have my cards, and I'm kind of just satisfied. I don't really need duplicates. And so perhaps there's just collectors that have kind of reached saturation and they're not really buying or selling, they're just content. But that's maybe one hypothesis there. I don't know if others have sort of ideas on this.
I would have said maybe 6 months ago that the singles market is playing a role, and potentially the graded market as well is playing a role in this, and that still might be the case. When I get to the single slides, we'll see whether you think the numbers that I have for the singles that I track throws a wrench into that hypothesis. But yeah, one thought was that just given how popular certain high value singles are and grading is, that might make the set sales less of a thing that people are
That's
going
an interesting hypothesis. All right, but let me stop interrupting and let you get to it.
No, interrupt as much as possible. Well, maybe not as much as possible, but every now and then seems good to me. Digging into the data a little bit more, you can see that a certain, some of the sets haven't really moved very much. Hoth, Dagobah, Cloud City, Jabba's Palace, Endor, Reflections 2 Premium, really no change. A bit of an upswing on A New Hope Special Edition, Death Star 2, and Reflections 3 Premium, but nothing significant. The upswings are, 5 to 10% max, more in the 5%. And the downswings also have been not particularly significant. Premier and Tatooine, in fact, have actually in Q4 increased, even though average in Q3 and Q4 they've gone down a little bit. Some interesting news on this front, before I get to some bad news on this front, is that Premier, Black Border and White Border, A New Hope, Hoth, Dagobah, Cloud City, Death Star 2, Tatooine, Ref 2 Premium, and Ref 3 Premium are all pretty much selling in the last couple months at their peak that they've ever sold at. Which I had not expected, given sort of how the last year has been in terms of the CCG market. But those sets are doing like very well. They're either like at their peak or close to their peak in recent times. The potentially bad news here is that Coruscant and Theed, and then especially Reflections 2 Foil and Reflections 3 Foil, those sets have taken a real hit over the last year and over the last 6 months and over the last couple months as well. And so, I don't know exactly what to make of that. I don't know if folks have thoughts here, but these 4 sets have really taken a significant hit compared to the rest of the sets.
I think my theory there is if you're selling sets, completed sets of these, you're probably doing it wrong, right? Because Coruscant sets are what, $500-$600, and there's like 10 cards that are $50 each in there, right? Between the Maul and the All Wings, there's just, I think individually people are finding that the sets are much more valuable as singles than they are. Of course, selling singles is much more tedious, but I would pick up a Maul, but I don't really need a set of Coruscant, right? I don't need all 180 cards, and so I thought for a while that Coruscant as a set is just much better as singles than it is as a set, right? Because you just have so many valuable cards in there. And same thing with the Palace. And the Reflections 3 Premiums, like you could sell the the 100 premiums as singles for probably 500 if you want to do the work for it, and it's premium sets like 350 or something. And same thing with even foils, right? Like everybody wants the 1 or 2 foils to complete their sets or for decks or whatever, but not like 105 Reflections 2 foils. Yeah, that's my.
You want to spend $3,000 on a Ref 3 foil set so you can get your Maul.
Yeah, right. It's like, no, I just want the Maul, maybe a Destroyer Droid, and a couple other like notable foils. I don't need all 100. I don't need like the After Her foil, really. Like, it's like a pretty low value thing to me.
And Greg, you probably have this data, but those 4 sets in particular strike me as like some of the most highest valued sets possible. So like you're really gonna have to stretch your budget. You're gonna have to be someone who, like, for some reason wants all of them and has basically none of the mains or the cards there to go get that. Yeah, it would make sense to me that those are trending lower.
Yeah, those are definitely the 4, other than the tournament foil sets, are the 4 most valuable sets in the game. Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I think Matt's point about singles is correct. I mean, especially as Coruscant and Theed continue to go down, and the singles remain pretty strong, it just becomes a much better proposition to sell singles as opposed to selling the sets. I will also say that all 4 of these sets really, compared to the rest of the sets during COVID, skyrocketed far more. A lot of the other sets went up 100%, potentially even more. These sets were going up 300%, 400% over their pre-COVID values. And so it could just be, even now with Carson and Thie taking a big hit, they're still selling at well over 100% more than they used to, right? And so it could be that there's a kind of autocorrect going on there, that they just really were overvalued for a short period of time.
Yeah. I mean, I think as well for like new collectors getting in, this stuff is like, the reason that this is expensive and rare is because it was the end of the game, where like most people that are coming back and you're like, I played from 95 to 99. I'm back, guys. This is super cool. They didn't even know these sets existed. So for them, it's like probably the last thing they're going to collect or play. It's not really in any retro formats, right? Like, a lot of people play Premier to Death Star 2. It's a fun little format. That's going to exclude these 3-4 sets, right? So I think for players even coming back that just want to play a tabletop game or, kitchen table game with their buddies, like they're not going to really need these cards. So yeah. All right. What else we got here?
So one last point about sets, I'll move on to singles. Here's an interesting factoid. These 3 white border sets, I know the pictures are of the limited expansions, but these 3 as white border sets, I mean, the data is small, but they've been selling more frequently recently than they have in the past. And when I say more frequently, I mean I have like 3 data points for each of these over the last month or two. But compared to like usually in a quarter, I'll often not even get a single data point sometimes from these sets, for there to be 3 in a short period of time for each of them. I found to be interesting. It could be a blip. It could not be a blip. It's hard to say with such small sample sizes. But while they're not selling at their kind of peaks anymore, they are selling again in a way that they haven't been for a while.
I'll just
I love white border Hoth. So go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say really quickly that I can definitely speak to that as a returning collector. Those are the 3 sets that I didn't have when I first collected the game, because I was like, white border, whatever, I'm not really interested. And then returning, it's like, oh wow, yeah, I definitely am interested in this now. And they look cool. Like white border Hoth is awesome.
Yeah.
And I would say Dagobah too. So I could see that some people who originally like left those off, especially after Premiere, white border was just like mass produced. There's so much of that out there. These are, I think, people getting the hang of like, oh yeah, there's just less of that out there, it seems like.
Yeah, I will say, like, I mean, Hoth looks good, just generally because of the theme. But when I was a kid, I remember thinking these did absolutely not look cool at all.
Yeah.
And now I see them like, oh, they're so great. But I imagine a lot of that is just my knowledge of their rarity playing a role in how I view them. All right, so moving on to some of the singles. This is less of a mixed bag, and there's a bit more negative news, and I'm curious to chat about what might be the story here. But actually, Emperor Palpatine in Q3, so all of this is comparing the latter half of the year to the first half of the year. Palpatine has stayed relatively static at around 224. Luke has gone down a little bit. And just as a note here, this is the first time since I've started tracking data in 2019, and really since I came back to the game, that Luke is averaging less than Palpatine on any consistent basis. I mean, they're still both doing well, but this is an interesting fact that I've never seen Palpatine outsell Luke like this.
I think I have an answer to this, right? It's because the PC, the Players Committee, did a virtual version of Luke and the Emperor, which is not quite as good as these two. But if you're a player sitting on like 4 of these, you're like, maybe I'll sell a couple, right? I think that the playability is still very good for both of these cards, but for people playing, they just don't need 12. They're like, maybe I'll have 6 and use 6 of the virtual ones. So I think that might be, what happened with these 2 cards.
Yeah, I mean, they're still very strong, and I guess what I'd be curious about is why. I mean, again, this is like a minor change. And Palpatine, you always used to sell for like maybe $10 less than Luke. Now it's $6 more. This is not not a terribly significant difference, but it is interesting that it's now overtaken him. These are doing well. This actually this data looks good. The Reflections 1 ultra rare foils, Luke has stayed the same in the second half, although this is, if for those who remember, Luke took a big hit last time we met, and so he didn't continue to take a further hit, but is still selling for under 100. Vader has gone down a little bit as well. They both ticked up a bit in Q4, by the way, about $10 or so, nothing too crazy. But so Luke is now sitting around 100 and Vader at about 140. Looking at the Ref 2 ultra rare foils, the news starts getting worse. All of them are down, 17%, 6%. Vader has taken quite a big hit. Mara has taken a hit. while Palpatine looks like he's taken less of a hit than the others, in Q4 the average is down to about 240. So it looks like Palpatine's the foil version is starting to take a hit as well.
I will just note that if anyone wants to sell me a Mara Jade for $80, I will buy a foil Mara Jade for $80, right? Like, I'll just say that right now. Like, I think it's a great card, and there's like a slight hedge that Disney will introduce her as a character. I think that she's severely undervalued at $84. And this is, an average of eBay sales is what we're talking about here. But I will absolutely buy one if someone wants to sell me one for $80.
No, that's right. 80 seems very low for her, and obviously the buy, available buy it nows on eBay are far above this. But in terms of averages, this is where we're at. I mean, I have a hypothesis here, and I'd be curious to hear from the graded folks about this. But just quickly, Ref 3 foils. A bit more of a mixed bag here. Quiggy's down a little bit. 3PO hasn't changed much. The sample sizes on these are very small, so sometimes a few sales really shift the averages here. Maul's up a little bit. P59's down a bit. Although looking at this is Q3 and Q4. Looking at just Q4, Maul is down closer to 750, and P59 is up to about 275. Still down from his peak, although this 50% downturn for P59 is including like a $400 outlier sale from the first half of the year that was really significantly affecting the averages. So these are down a little bit, not as much as the Ref 2. And I guess the thing that I was thinking about is just to what degree the popularity of graded cards is affecting the average prices of some of these high value singles, and that people are potentially less interested, maybe interested in playing a premium for a mint ungraded card, but less interested in paying what used to be the average price for near mint or scuffed cards.
Greg, just a quick question for these. Do you track graded singles as a part of this?
I don't. So none of this. So this and so this has the popularity of graded singles has hurt my sample sizes quite a bit
sure.
last year.
I do have some notes. Well, first of all, I do think that the growing popularity of graded has probably hit the sets, as you guys alluded to earlier, just because, if I'm going to be dropping 500, 1,000 or more on a set, and you really only are interested in the condition of like the top, like let's say for Reflections 3 foil, like the condition of the Darth Maul Young Apprentice foil is going to greatly change the value of the set, and that's difficult to do on eBay. So I imagine it might be for better, as long as you know who you're dealing with, it might be better to deal with someone you can kind of communicate with better. The other thing that I want to note as well is that if you look at the IRFs here, I mean, these are good cards, but I think we've discussed here and maybe on Kyle's channel, I know Andy has discussed it too, that Reflections 2, the characters in there in general are some of them are more appealing than the ones in Reflections 3. So I'm almost surprised to see the prices here of the Lord Vader and the Mara Jade, like you said, Matt, that they're so low here. Likewise with the price of Reflections, I don't know if we'll discuss it today, but the Reflections 2 sealed, I believe, is kind of almost caught up to Reflections 3 for the box. So it'll be really interesting to see how that continues to evolve going forward.
Yeah, I think Reflections 2, like these are all playable cards in a number of formats, right? Reflections 3, I mean, yeah, the 3PO is good, but like I don't think people are really playing with the Qui-Gon or I don't know. They're like less like iconic good cards in any format you're playing. And I mean, people who are playing with ultra rare foils in their decks are crazy, but for Luke and the Emperor, like it's actually not that crazy of a value proposition, right? It's like $80 more or something for the foil version. But yeah, I don't know. I think that these are just generally like P59's the most random ultra rare foil in the world. I love it because it's sort of this troll value. It's like kind of trolling us as collectors, but I think it's not surprising that he's down the most and Maul is like holding his ground because it's just a great card that you can have as a collector, sports collector, whatever. You just dip your toes in here. You want to have the near $1,000 Maul. Okay, you don't want to have the P59 droid that chased around Qui-Gon around a battle like the Trade Federation ship, like when they went to the vents. Right?
Yeah, it's good.
It's cool.
You would have thought they'd put something like QA AI or something, because they had 3 dark side IRFs in Ref 2, so maybe they'd have like 3 light side ones here, but no, apparently not.
Shimmy
dispersion.
Skywalker should have been the other one.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, and it is, I mean, just to reemphasize, the P59 looks like he's taken a bigger hit than he did because of, I think, this one big outlier sale that shifted the numbers where, averaging around 250 is actually, roughly the highest P59's ever been as a steady average.
Cool. All right. Well, let's wrap up here. I think you got a couple more slides, and then we'll get over.
Yeah, I actually only have one more. I was going to skip it, but then you mentioned it, which is just the Coruscant AIs and the Theed AIs have actually improved a little bit recently. And in fact, in Q4, these numbers are even up more from here. Although, again, with small sample sizes, you get one, almost $400 Queen Amidala Ruler of Naboo sale, and it just like drastically shifts the averages there. And so, but they are up, and they had been taking a hit for a while, so that's good to see on them.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Greg. I think I'm excited to move. Oh, I removed the wrong thing here. We're here to talk a little bit about
Greg's done. Get rid of him.
Sorry, I'm bad at controlling this. We're going to talk grading, we're going to talk sealed, and we're going to talk uncut sheets. So I'm going to hand it over to Mark and Luke over here are going to be our maestros. I think Luke's kicking it off here. So this is just an overview. So I'll let you go.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Matt. So before the show, we had talked about, okay, we're going to try to compare quarters 1 and 2 to quarters 3 and 4. And so we have up-to-date data as of this evening. This is being recorded on December 10th, 2023. So on the left side, obviously, you can see January through June, the end of June being the end of quarter 2. So at $80,000, almost $81,000 in graded sales that we tracked on 916. The thing I think was a little interesting here is that by company, PSA was like just way far and away the company that had the most sales overall, which still is the case, but you'll see on quarter 3 and 4 that we have like more companies joining the graded market and being sold. I just threw in the top sale in quarter, it was actually quarter 1, but out of quarter 1, quarter 2 was a Darth Vader Reflections 1 foil, PSA 10 for $2,125. And then for July through tonight, including tonight's sales, 71,460 on 734 sales. So a little bit less, as Greg alluded to, unless we have an absolutely crazy, ridiculous end to December, I don't think that 3 and 4 are going to meet the same like level as quarters 1 and 2 in terms of overall market sales. But yeah, we could potentially get close with a really good end to December, especially with the actual total number in terms of money spent by company. Again, so instead of just having PSA, BGS, and SGC, this last quarter we added CGC, and like there's actually sales for CGC popping up, HGA, a couple of those as well. So a little bit more diversity in terms of grading companies that we're seeing. And the top sale, again, another Darth Vader, but this is Lord Vader Reflections 2 foil, PSA 10, 2,250. Next couple slides are going to be from Mark. He's going to tell a little bit about just the market in general. So
sounds good.
Slides.
If you could you just go back to the previous slide really quick?
Sure.
I just wanted to point out for the other companies that I'm really happy to see the emergence of other companies. I know in the graded group, we have some champions. I think Mike Arison really likes SGC. Personally, I really like the look of the CGC, and I know Cam and Kyle really like HGA. So I just wanted to note that I'm really happy that those other companies are getting a foothold, and hopefully they'll continue to grow. Sorry, yeah, go into the next slide.
Great.
Mark, thanks for putting this slide in Christmas colors, by the way.
Yeah, it's actually completely intentional. We had kind of a pre-chat going on, and I have I don't know. It's showing up the red as kind of a crimson on there. I don't know, magenta, but that's all right. It's close enough. So we got here we have on the y-axis here the number of graded sales, and then you can see the quarter along the x-axis here, and you can see, although I'm not entirely certain, although maybe Luke, did you comment at one point in time on that Q2? There's just a normal spike on the number of sales, but apart from that, we kind of see a steady increase in number of sales as far as what we're tracking here going back to 2020, with one aberration there. I don't know. Maybe someone just listed a bunch of sales at some point to double it, but yeah, it's interesting seeing that jump there. But it's great to see that it's increasing. The number of sales are increasing with time, because I remember back in, when was it? time flies. Was it around 2021? I had submitted the huge order before the COVID shutdown at PSA. So I got the backlog like coming back, and I don't think anyone else was able to submit. So for a while, I was pretty much the only person selling cards on eBay because I was the only one who was able to get slabs out there. But now I think, you have several sellers on a weekly basis listing cards. So I think that's really healthy to see for the market moving forward. And hopefully we'll continue to see the number of sales keep increasing.
Yeah, I remember when we first started being friends like 2 years ago, you were like the only graded guy. People were just like throwing tomatoes at you, like, get him out of here. Like, get him out of here.
What are you doing?
This guy's ruining the hobby.
Yeah.
And like to have been like probably the like sole source of Q1 2021 sales. This is at like, I don't know, 20-fold in like 2 years. It must feel a little vindicated. You like that like vindicated song from what is it, Dashboard?
Yeah, it's been interesting. It's been an interesting ride. And yeah, I know some other, even before me, there was JP in the graded group, and I know Kyle Chapman and others have kind of gotten their feet wet in it. And yeah, it's really nice to see that just it's become more of like an accepted alternative arm, if you will, of the hobby, that, this is something that can dovetail nicely with the players and other collectors, and it can help really, improve the robustness of the collector base and the player base, hopefully as well. And hopefully that'll even extend into other card games as well, like Lord of the Rings.
Right now, the Lord of the Rings people are like, you graded card, they're like, we need to like take him to the public square. Right?
It's all right. Just give it a few more years.
All right. What else we got?
Yeah, let's go to the next slide. So it's kind of in a similar vein. We're also going to be looking at the graded sales here, but instead on the y-axis, instead of the number of sales, we have the total US dollars of the graded sales here as well. So you see, again, the similar overall trend is increasing with time, but kind of as we've seen before in the other aspects that we've covered today over the course of 2023. I guess you do see from Q1 to Q2, there's a jump in prices, but overall kind of a downward trend on the year. There could be all sorts of factors for that, whether it's a post-COVID thing or kind of a general economy thing or a general collecting trend across hobbies. I'm not quite sure whether I have a strong hypothesis as to which is contributing most or whether it's a combination of those factors. But overall, again, I think we see that the overall trend over time, looking back, is very promising in terms of the growth of the hobby, although, in the short term, over the course of the year, maybe things have cooled down a little bit. And then I've got one more slide here from my contributions, and then we'll go back to Luke. So if you go to the next slide. So here was the graded sales. So you'll note that on the left side of the graph, there's actually a whole bunch of very low sales volumes from 2017 to 2020, and it's skipping quarters. And that's just because the data wasn't really being collected all that rigorously at the time. But since Q1 of 2021 onward, we've been collecting sales from eBay. So you can see it's kind of jumping around, but fairly consistently in terms of the upper and lower bound, somewhere between 40 and 80,000 US dollars worth of graded sales that are being tracked per quarter. So yeah, it's consistent, kind of like sealed prices. They go up, they go down, but they're much more, I would say, stable than some of the other prices. So if you look for some stability there, well, you can see it here on this chart. And yeah, that's what I had for today. So I'll get back to you, Luke, if you got some more to share.
Sure. Yeah. So last thing on this point with the graded and sealed tracker, we'll turn our attention to sealed. So Q1 and Q2 total sales, 231, and that was $115,000 worth of product that was purchased through the tracker, or that we have tracked. And then interestingly, and this maybe goes with, again, the perceived increase in the graded market. So like you buy sealed product, not only to hold on to it, but also like the idea is like if you open a sealed product, you're more likely to get really high possible graded cards. And so that has seen a jump. We've seen more sealed products sold the last 2 quarters than, I've only been on this, like Mark and Cam invited me onto the the tracking for like the last few months, but going back in terms of the tracker, like the last couple of months have really, really been good in terms of sealed sales. So almost $123,000, and we're not until the end of December. And so there's been a lot of sealed products sold there in the last few months for sure. That is definitely a market that seems to be pretty robust and yeah, continuing to be an interesting one to follow.
Yeah, sealed's fascinating because I do think people use it as a proxy. Like there are people that just are buying sealed product because they're like want to just put money somewhere, right?
Mhm.
Like a Ref 3 box at 3,000. I don't know. It's a fascinating little market that like these are real. That's real amounts of money. I mean, this is not like $2,000 in sales. Like those are a small home in the Midwest amounts of money.
Mhm.
But anyway, I'm sorry to interrupt there. Go ahead.
No, I mean, like you said, I think the highest one that we saw recently was a Reflections 3 box for 3,000, like basically around 3,500. Like it was right around there. And so, yeah, those, as Greg pointed out with his, like the sets that are worth the most, Coruscant Feed, Reflections 2, Reflections 3, all of those sealed are just worth crazy amounts of money. Reflections 3, Reflections 2, pretty like far and away the most, but still, we had a couple Coruscant sales. We had, I think, maybe 1 or 2 Theed sales the last quarter or two. And, those are definitely, thousands of dollars for sure.
I also think if you're a new collector coming in, they're like pretty impossible to get, right? Like it's not even just like the
Yeah.
expensive price tag. It's like finding them is challenging, right? Unless you're looking at like a $6,000 buy it now on eBay.
Mm-hmm.
People just don't really sell it super often. So,
yeah.
All right, are we moving on to some uncut sheets?
I feel like that's a great segue because that's the same thing with uncut sheets. People just don't sell them. So let's move on. This is something I'm really passionate about, and thanks, Matt, for giving me the time to talk about this. So I had 5 kind of main points in terms of, because I just think this is really untalked about in terms of a collector's marketplace. So just so people know, uncut sheets of cards, like the one right behind me is Death Star 2. They were and still are given away as prize support. Originally, Decipher did this too. To you win a championship or something, you get this sheet of cards given to you. And they're also donation incentives by the PC. So if you donate a specific amount of money each year, the players committee will say, hey, we're sending you an uncut sheet. And so I think I actually bought one originally off Matt that he had gotten as a donation incentive from players committee that he talked about. Second thing I think people should know, they have value. Uncut sheets do have value. I think some people are like, these are basically worthless, but probably not as much value as the individual cards on them in most circumstances. If you were to, have the actual cards like in pristine cutout circumstances, like that would be probably worth more than the sheets themselves. That said, like there's no value at all to trying to cut them up yourself. That's like just not possible to do with the same accuracy as the original. Lots of people have tried. People have purchase like pretty high-end cutters. It's like, just don't take an uncut sheet and just try to like cut them up yourself. If you're wanting to have a card that looks like an original Decipher made card, that is going to be pretty much impossible to do
unless you have access to like a Cardamundi facility, which is one of the big card printers,
right.
Which you're going to spend like $2,000 to get access to that facility, which is going to be way more than the value of an Endor foil sheet or something.
For sure. Other thing that I think is a common misconception, some people will say, hey, I have a feed sheet, but it has AIs on it. Well, actually, the uncut sheets are all exactly the same in terms of layout. So if you have a feed rare sheet, it's going to have the AIs in the same place, like every single time. There's no difference in terms of layouts. And then the final thing about uncut sheets is just an overview. They're kind of just hard. They're sort of bulky. They're hard to store. They take up space. They have shipping tubes. You need wall space to be able to display them. You have to be able to pay for custom framing. So in terms of like the asset to hold on to, it's not like a sealed box where it's like kind of nice and compact, or a graded card where you can display that really easily. An uncut sheet is sort of hard in terms of holding on to this as an asset. It's like this tube that's sitting in your closet, that's taking up space, or it's again on your wall. Do you have the space for that? Do you have the money to frame it? So it's sort of a weird class of collectible for the hobby. So I thought I would just start with that. I wanted to show you just a couple of examples, right, of uncut sheets. So the one that is right behind me right now is the Death Star 2 sheet. And so this is from the Players Committee, Players Encyclopedia. And I just wanted to say, Light Side is pretty easy to acquire, right? Like the one that's behind me, it's going to cost you. It's about $350 through eBay. And there's only been one that sold at that price in 2023. So the seller is Wild Things Games in Salem, Oregon. I live close enough that I was able to just drive down there and grab some from them. So it's sort of like, okay, what are you willing to pay? As I think lots of people know, if you put a buy it now something on eBay, like a pretty high price, maybe eventually someone will pay higher than they would if it was a 7-day auction, right? Auctions are really if you want to like make some money pretty quickly, and like if you know the actual value of it. Conversely, the Dark Side Death Star 2 sheet, like who knows how much that is worth? You just don't see those out there. Like they're not available. Like no one's posted about that I've seen in a very long time. In fact, people in the Facebook groups in the past have said, hey, I'll trade somebody a Death Star 2 light side sheet for a dark side, because those just aren't out there. Like people don't post about them. So the value is really hard to determine. So the last couple slides here on just uncut sheets in general, just if we're talking about market, this is our market report, like uncut sheets, extremely hard to determine the actual value of it. As some of our friends would say, the value is what someone's willing to pay for it, right? So very easily available on eBay, a few of them. So like kind of a current set value, those sheets, as you can see listed, Premier, A New Hope, just the light side, not dark side. Dark side, really not out there, hard to find. Jabba's Palace, the Endor foil sheets, very easy to find, very like set value. Special edition, and then the Death Star 2 light side sheet. Everything else, includes of rare, foil, premium sheets, just really harder to come by, very infrequently appear in groups on eBay. So that value is just sort of like, who knows? Likely anywhere from 100, 150, probably an Endor non-foil would probably go for that. I think potentially like a Reflections 2 foil sheet, so rare and also just pretty to look at. And again, those really high value cards like Palpatine or Luke Skywalker, I think that potentially on an open market could go for 1,000. But again, they just don't appear on eBay. The ones that are listed there up in number 1, easy to acquire. Like the other ones just never come up. Like maybe one, like a Tatooine sheet sold a couple years ago for $200, I think, on eBay, but just so rarely posted that it's just hard to determine. The other things, Cloud City, just no one's ever seen an image of a rare sheet, light side or dark side. And the Reflections 3 foils, no one's ever seen that, at least that I'm aware of. The Players Committee doesn't have that encyclopedia. And so the ones like, right, if I'm trying to track them all down, light side Hoth is what I'm currently after, dark side Dagobah, and then the Theed sheets, both of those. In terms of like what my own personal market would be like, I think I would probably be willing to pay anywhere from $300 to $500 for both those sheets, just because they're so challenging to find. As someone who's spent a fair amount of time to like, track them down. I'm currently sitting in my basement surrounded by uncut sheets. Those are the ones I'm missing, right? And so I'd probably spend a fair amount of money on them. So yeah, that's my overview.
Uncut sheets feel like the quintessential "make me an offer, bro" product.
Yeah.
Right? Like
they totally are. Lots of times
like,
I talk to people, they're like, hey, what do you think this is worth? And I'll say like, well, here's like my closest akin to that. But yeah, make me an offer is definitely how it seems to go at the moment.
I just saw, this is a different game, but there's an Alien vs Predator game, and a guy's like, I found an uncut sheet of this. And someone's like, I'll give you $1,000. I was like, whoa. I'm sorry, Alien vs Predator uncut sheets, $1,000. That's insane. But like this is once again, it's like there's a small number of people that really think this is super awesome. I mean, I have an uncut sheet like from Lord of the Rings framed across the room. They make really cool decor. It's really fun to track down, but as you mentioned, it's also bulky. Like you need an entire basement to deck out. You need permission from your significant other to do all of this. Like it's just way more of a burden than like a binder, which can store like tens of thousands of dollars worth of value in like the coolest cards you own or whatever, right? Okay, we're going to transition a little bit to some questions from the audience, and feel free to jump in, anyone from the group here. But our first question is coming from Jimmy. And he asks us, what's the impact of virtual cards and on collecting in the marketplace? I think that, virtual cards actually drive a lot of the marketplace, like things like Speak with the Jedi Council. That was like a $50 Coruscant rare. And it's like, no one's playing those decks anymore. So no one needs Speak with the Jedi Council anymore. So I think that there's definitely value there, right? If what people are playing, what players need. But I don't know what people have other thoughts. Greg, you actually play open more than I do. So You're on mute, my friend.
Whoops, sorry. I mean, I think there's cards that definitely have quite a lot of value because of the way they've been virtualized, like Walkling and Force Push and cards like this that, you know, just probably wouldn't sell for anywhere near what they sell for if it wasn't for the fact
Yeah,
that
they're $3 cards. If it's not
yeah.
the virtual version.
And then, you know, in other cases, virtualizing certain cards may drop the value of hers. Or I mean, I don't know. I don't have like a single store, you know, like some of the other folks out there. So, you know, I don't know what, for instance, the virtual versions of Command and Leadership have done to the sales of those cards, for instance. You know, but it'd be interesting to know, you know, when they make these kinds of cheaper, more accessible versions, you know, to what degree that affects the price of the other versions. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're kind of strategic where the versions they make are slightly not as good as the original ones, and so there's still a value in having the original ones. But all right, but let's move on to our next question from Jimmy. Maybe Mark or Luke can jump into this one. Is any idea an estimated print volume of episode 1 post Tatooine? Because Tatooine was printed out the wazoo, and then it didn't sell, so I think they overcorrected. But I don't know if you guys have ideas on sort of numbers.
Yeah, so actually I started a thread on the players committee message boards. Probably, gosh, what was this, in 2020 or 2021? And basically we were trying to gather the numbers on the bottom of the boxes. And I don't know, again, there's kind of theories like, did this mean anything or was it related to the print run? And I don't think people are entirely certain what the numbers represent. But roughly, for example, on, let's say, Theed Palace or Coruscant, I don't believe you'll ever see a number higher than the mid 30,000. So whether that relates to the number of boxes they actually made or not, I believe we even asked, like, did we ask Jim Colson at one point in time? I forget, but I don't know if we can confirm that it's related to the actual like number, because there might have been some sort of, you know, mind games going on, especially with the potential you know, looming a Wizards of the Coast getting the license in terms of spoofing how much you're actually making. So I don't know if it actually related to it, but there are, you know, efforts that have been made to try to figure that out. And if I had to guess, maybe that would be roughly around how many boxes were made. But again, highly speculative.
This is kind of a follow-up on grading. Thoughts on precision and consistency of grading vendors? I mean, I'll just say from my own experience, I sent in 30 cards to PSA and got tons of 7s and 8s back. And I sent stuff into PSA a year ago and I got tons of 8s and 9s. And I was like, huh, maybe the graders are just better. I didn't think the cards I sent in, you know, 3 months ago were way worse. But I'm just curious if you think that maybe their staff is better now, or maybe they're under the gun to like not give out 9s and 10s as much, or curious there.
Yeah, I can jump in on this one as well. So yeah, there's a few things going on here. I mean, one, you might just say how intrinsically good are companies at grading cards when there's so many subjective factors that you could say, okay, well, there's the centering. Okay, if the centering's really off, it doesn't look very good. But for example, PSA, people tend to agree, tends to be a little bit more lenient on centering and maybe a little bit tougher on edges and corners compared to, say, BGS. So that what looks like a 9 or an 8 may differ between the two. Then, like you said, with the rise in popularity, PSA hired a bunch of new graders. I have seen inconsistency from submission to submission. Sometimes you're just like, wow, this person must have been in a great mood. You know, that $20 bill I slipped in my card savers must have done the trick. And another time, maybe it really made them mad. So there is that. And yeah, even within the grading group, I think there tends to be kind of differences in opinion on like just how well graders can do. Because some people tend to think like, yeah, you know, a grader is they're much more experienced. They're going to catch things you can't do. And then other people maybe are more cynical and they're like, oh, they're just like trying to hire your average Joe and they just got to get cards graded. So maybe they're not getting graded enough. And I don't know if we really on the outside have the answers, but it is still fun to speculate on
Oh, absolutely.
what we think. Maybe the cause there.
Kind of a follow-up question. This is from Alex. Why are ungraded cards dropping in price versus graded and sealed continue to rise? I mean, I think that there's just more graded sales than there's ever been before, so there's more data points. versus like ungraded cards have been selling for 25 years, and people are just more used to price changes. And they also saw a pretty significant increase over the last 4 years. Versus grading is like a very nascent space still. I think. I don't know if others have takes on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think maybe it was last time with Cam where we were trying to figure out, like, compared to say the sports market. I believe that ungraded versus graded, if anything, actually graded might be a little bit undervalued here still compared to the raw prices, because like a near mint probably sells about the same as a 7 or 8 in Star Wars CCG universe, but I think in sports it's probably closer to, like, even at an 8, usually for something as old as this would get a premium, and anything that's desirable, which this we certainly have enough collectors here to drive desirability of these cards. Yeah, I don't know if I would say that it's not desired so much, or the ungraded singles are in desired so much as when you're wanting to drop $700 on your Darth Maul Young Apprentice foil. It'd be really nice to make sure that it at least meets some sort of objectives, or maybe objective specifications. At least it's got a label that says someone certified it as being a certain grade.
Yeah.
So.
Our next question is coming in from our friend Andy Talaga, and I'm going to put this towards Greg. He asks, "Is Star Wars CCG collecting dead?" What do you think, Greg? I think you're on mute again.
No, I don't think it's dead. I mean, even with just thinking about the data I showed earlier, right? The averages are up and down, right? But on the whole are still reasonably strong. Yeah, sales volume's down, but I would expect sales volume to be down in a world where grading is on the up, right? So if you look at, like, if you think about the total, like the entire market 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, yeah, there was a lot more set sales and there was a lot fewer graded sales. And I wasn't tracking sealed stuff back then, but I'd be willing to bet it wasn't going, not even just the prices, but in terms of just the frequency. And now those things are selling far more. And yeah, while set sales are down, in terms of the raw numbers, in terms of the overall market, I don't know, it'd be interesting, but I would speculate the overall market is stronger on the whole, and that we shouldn't look at any individual component of the market and say, oh, look, this is on a downturn, therefore the market's weak.
Yeah, I'll just say this is, I have my toes in a lot of out of print CCGs because I'm a loser, right? But this market is the most robust of all of them, right? Like every other game is an absolute mess with pricing and price history and memory. Like Harry Potter TCG like witnessed like a huge COVID boom, and now it's like dirt cheap again. And it's like a serious retracing happened with a lot of games, and this game has shown a lot of resiliency for a bunch of reasons, like the PC, it be just continue to put cards out there and really the drumbeat with playing, nostalgia, the Star Wars IP, the fact that cards look great, and I mean Luke is out there putting up beautiful pieces of art on his wall because it looks great, and like I just don't think there's the same interest long term from people and in a lot of other games. So comparatively speaking, this is the most living of all the dead games that I see out there. Our next question is on sealed. So this is from Ben, who asks, which sealed boxes are in most demand? Where's the least supply? I mean, I think the most demand is episode 1 on and ref 2. I think that's my take on it. Maybe DS2, but what do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, going by what we kind of were seeing in terms of the numbers on the boxes, in terms of rarity, yeah, certainly the Reflections 2 and 3, especially Reflections 2. Reflections 2 seems to be very difficult to find. It maybe at any one point in time, I feel like there's either 0 or 1 of them on eBay. I haven't checked recently, so I very well could be wrong on that. But of all the boxes, I think that it's probably the hardest to find. And the episode 1 box is also, like you pointed out, Theed and Coruscant. The other one that's kind of interesting is Endor, because I feel like ever since I've paid attention to it, it's been between about $900 to $1,000 for the last 3 to 4 years. It's like the stable coin of Star Wars CCG boxes. It just kind of remains the same, although the US dollar might be doing this. So I don't know what that means for the overall overall economy, but that's all right. That's another discussion.
I still think Endor, as far as like the cards you can pull to the cost of a sealed product, is like the most disproportionate of all sets. Like the best pull from Endor is what, a Daughter Skywalker foil, maybe 3PO foil.
Yeah, well, yeah, those are super rare because of how they were distributed. But
yeah, it's just like, I mean, the best rare I guess you get would be
Right.
like Wokeling, whatever. Like,
yeah.
which is maybe going to cover the cost of a pack at like $40 a pack. It's just kind of wild how expensive Endor is compared to like the quality of the pulls. Whereas Coruscant, like, you could pull like any of the AIs is going to make your money back. Probably 5 singles and like the all wings combo card, a Maul, maybe a Queen. Like, there's just good stuff that people like. And Endor can be pretty bad, especially Dark Side rares. It's like
Endor's a rough set. Yeah, don't want to open that.
So a kind of follow up there. How much sealed do you reckon is being opened every year? I actually think the amount of sealed being opened every year is pretty immaterial to the price of sealed product. Like, I think me opening a pack of Jabba's Palace is not having any impact on the price, right? Or like guys, like, I don't know, you've opened some stuff on YouTube. I don't think it's having a material impact.
Yeah, probably not. Or even you guys opening a box of reflections too. I mean,
Yeah, I
that's
was gonna say
that was quite an endeavor there. Props to Cam and you guys. But yeah, I don't know. Like, probably at the moment, not so much. I could see, like, if we start seeing wild swings and, let's say, graded cards, a bunch of people might think, hey, let's like rip a bunch of sealed and take advantage of perhaps a temporary inefficiency in the market, if you will. But barring something like that, I don't really see, people opening sealed en masse, just because lots of times it's maybe not quite as bad as opening a box of Endor, but moments like that are few and far between where you can justify the excitement relative to
Okay,
the
our last question from the audience here is, how much has sealed pricing changed over the last 3 to 5 years? And sort of a follow up, where do you see it going in the future? So, Luke or Mark, what do you guys want to hop in here? How much has changed? I mean, my guess is up. It's gone up significantly.
Yeah, I mean, it does sort of depend on the set, right? So, like, I think something like Death Star 2 is holding value or increasing. Reflections 2 and 3 pretty clearly very valuable. I don't know if it's like a straight trend lined up in terms of, okay, like this is definitely going to be worth like $5,000 in 5 years. But like, yeah, there's some things that really hold a fair amount of value. And so to rip sealed product, like at least the box, I don't think the packs, like you said, I don't think the packs really matter all much. But if you have a sealed box that you're ripping, yeah, that's an interesting proposition, I would say. I'll be curious, like after this year, to kind of maybe do some comparison on sets and like sealed product and like do like a little comparison. I don't think we've been running the sealed tracker for enough time to really make a good observation in terms of how this is like changed. Maybe we've had like 2.5 years worth of data there. But yeah, I'll be curious to see what happens, I guess.
My guess is sealed will continue to creep up because it is very finite, and I think COVID wiped out all of the guys with storage units that forgot about it, like the eighth wonder of the world, which is the American garage and all the crap in it, was like kind of cleaned out during COVID because everyone was bored at home and they're like, let me go look what's in my garage. Oh, I found this sealed box of Hoth. What's this thing? And then, like, I saw this post like every week in 2020, right? Of people that found weird stuff in their garage, and I think that's largely cycled out. And I think at this point, people that wanted the stuff found it, and now it's just way harder to find randomly in the wild. I don't think people are finding boxes of Coruscant in their storage unit because they would have done that in the last 2 years, more than likely.
And really quickly, just one thing here in, let's say, Alpha Investments. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Rudy and Alpha Investments. So one of the things with modern cards that people are doing is they're investing in boxes. And while I'm not necessarily sure that that will bear out as far as being a good investment is concerned, it is kind of in the general consciousness that people are wanting to do it. And I think for these older card game such as Star Wars CCG, there could be something to it as opposed to even compared to a modern one, which people still do. I don't necessarily agree with it, but people do it. With
Oh,
the modern stuff
absolutely. Like
even.
the behavior being normalized is a big part of this, right? It's the, you know, even the idea that there's community of people also collecting this on Facebook groups, like this is all still a developing market, but it becoming more normal and like less weird. It's like, wait, why don't you open that box over there? It's like, no, don't open. Like that is like a huge, I think, psychological shift that's happening that helps more people get into this and the market grow. Okay, we're gonna play a quick game here. So we're gonna play a game of buy, sell, hold. And so if you want to buy it, you're gonna do a thumbs up. If you're gonna hold it, you're gonna go kind of this motion here. If you want to sell it, thumbs down, on a kind of range of products here. So I'll just kind of read something out. I'm just kind of curious where you guys are at. So, you know, this is sort of like, you know, like Jim Cramer or whatever, that stocks guy. You're like, buy, sell, hold, whatever. But kind of like what you think on if it's going to go up, if you should just maybe hang on to it or, you know, get rid of it because it's going to go down in value. So the first thing is Premier sealed product, buy, sell, hold. Okay. Philosophy there, ton of it printed, but it's iconic. It's sort of, and I think there's always going to be a market for people that might want to get back into the game and, you know, get it, you know, as a way to open, because I think you need open backpacks to get cards. All right. What about full sets, Premier to Special Edition? Okay, interesting. Luke, do you want to talk about why you were buying there?
Yes, because of the revised sets that we talked about earlier. If that includes the revised, then I'm good. I'm there. But if it's not, I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Next one, I added this in special for you, Luke. Uncut sheets.
Oh my God. Oh man. If you have uncut sheets, get in touch with me. Thank you.
All right. What about Endor foils? This is a buy, sell, or a hold. Greg, you can do a sell, man. It's not gonna hurt.
I don't think sell's the right move, but Endor foils are weird. I don't understand the market on them.
Yeah, I don't
hard to
know. A full
trade,
set
too,
could be
right?
like $150, and I'm like, well, but these are insanely hard to pull. Like you don't understand.
They're so shiny. They look amazing.
They like blind you with their shininess.
Yeah.
All right. What about Reflections 2 premium cards? Yeah. At $100 for a full set, it is drastically underpriced in my opinion.
Especially with Thrawn coming out with Ahsoka, especially, I mean, with all the possibilities with the EU that are out there. Oh, man, yeah, that's
like talent card could get introduced.
Yep.
Foreign, like
Yep.
I think it is very underpriced at like 100 to 125 first.
Yeah, Matt, you'll be happy to know that it's inching its way towards 150.
Okay, I guess I was a little.
I think its average is in the 140 range now, or something like that.
Okay, 40% off.
Yeah.
Okay, what about Japanese cards? Somewhere like the Japanese guys were just like crying and they're like, no, it seems done.
I'm with you, Matt. I'm with you, man.
Anyone else have thoughts on Japanese?
The thing with Japanese is you again, like you only need 2 or 3 people to make that market hot.
Sheets, yeah.
I could see maybe the premier mains, but like the random Hoth, you know, R1 rares that are going for multiple thousands. Like, I mean, there's a couple people and it'll be really stochastic, but yeah. Not mainstream.
All right, the last one on here I had Stormtroopers, which I guess I don't know who added that into, but you know, Stormtroopers are always a buy for me, you know.
Sure.
So I think that this is kind of all the time we have today. I hope everyone enjoyed the show. We're going to be back in probably, I guess, March of next year. But this is a game that is very vibrant. I think this is probably the most vibrant it's been in a while as far as people playing, people collecting, people trading, people selling. Even if the sales data doesn't always seem so upbeat, it doesn't mean that the groups aren't bigger than they've ever been. There's not more, you know, the best videos. I'll just little like company secret. The best videos I put on YouTube are Star Wars CCG by far. People like this game a lot, and people really are interested in it. And it's a game that has a special spot in my heart. Any closing thoughts from folks here? thanks so much for dealing with me for 59 minutes and blathering on. This has been a lot of fun, guys. We'll catch everybody